Hello, neighbor. I'm Robert Burns, and welcome once again to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. If you will recall from a previous segment, I said that we would have none other than Murphy Painter as our guest, and I'm happy to announce he is here with us today. So, welcome, Murphy.
Thank
It's
you, Robert.
great to have you on Sound Off Louisiana. We'll provide the link of the prior feature if anyone did not get an opportunity to see it. But, Murphy, let me just ask you this. What prompted you to choose today or this time frame to come forward at this time?
Well, Robert, you know, the world's kind of in a crisis right now, and law enforcement's in a crisis, and everything you read is something negative. And with all the last releases and all the stuff going on with the state police issue and a few other what I call misguided situations in state government, I'm in my 11th year of fighting a lawsuit against the Inspector General's office, and to this day, Preston Castile with Taylor Porter, who represents the OIG and also represents a few other people in this matter, has refused to depose me.
Okay.
And you know, even though all of the court documents and court records that have gone through really three different situations, two civil and one criminal. My side, or what actually happened to get to the point of me being indicted and having to file suit and all the rest of the stuff, has kind of been looked over, and nobody. I mean, hell, I'm 68 years old. You know, I'm gonna be 69 next month, and life is kind of on a short fuse right now, and I just want to make sure that the world sees and understands for my kids, grandkids, and future kids, whatever, that what happened, or at least my side of what took place.
Well, and we're delighted to provide you with that opportunity, and I will let you know that I plan to place in my will the stipulation that Sound Off remain on for quite some time. So that wish ought to be fulfilled. So could you give me just a little bit of the background of what ATC was like in the early part of this century when you were in control? Can you just let us know a little bit of behind the scenes things that were going on?
Well, you're going to find, and everybody that knows me is going to laugh when I say this, I don't have a short answer for anything, you know. So
Take all the time you need.
When I took over ATC in 1996, and that is a story in itself, an hour or two story. But basically, Governor Foster, who I consider to be one of the most honorable people ever to hold the office of governor and probably ever to be in politics in the state of Louisiana, entrusted me, or the people around him who were all so honest and so sincere and really wanted to do government the right way. When I got chose for that job, told me to go do the job and to do it right. That's all they wanted it to do. That it had problems in the past, we don't want to go into that, that's a whole nother story, but to do it the right way. So I spent pretty close to 15 years trying to honor that legacy of him entrusting me with that, along with the fact that most of the time the people that had that job were not law enforcement people, or were not people that took time to research or try to figure out why we control alcohol the way we do, or why it's so important for a government agency to have law enforcement powers and to try to regulate the manufacture, sale, and distribution of alcohol, along with tobacco later on that we wound up getting. So I took the job serious. I studied and researched the background of it, and tried to find out why the legislature had passed the laws that they did, and tried to put an agency together that would be fair but firm in upholding the will of the legislature and the will of the 21st Amendment in regulating alcohol. So that was a fight the whole time. I mean, from 1996 all the way to 2010, because it is such a unbelievable commodity. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's in church. You know, the wine is in church. Jesus turned water into wine. Everybody that's any political situation whatsoever has a friend that's in the grocery store business that has a liquor license or an alcohol license and sells alcohol. Anybody that's anybody, like I said, is connected to somebody that's tied to a licensing situation. And the law is complicated, but the major part of the law and the major thesis of the law is that you want to put honest people in the position of selling alcohol, and you don't want the element that was there in the 1900s that brought about or came about after Prohibition, brought on Prohibition, and then brought, you know, all the troubles doing Prohibition, and all that was based on the alcohol tobacco control, or ABC, what it was in the beginning of doing background checks and research, or trying to make sure that a person's character was pristine or followed the law, and that they were not a convicted felon or had too many arrests, misdemeanors and all that would lend them to probably be somebody that would abuse an alcohol beverage license. And that was the mainstay. I mean, everything in the alcohol beverage law says you do a background check on anybody and everybody that has anything to do with alcohol. And for somebody to sit and say that there's no law, there's no understanding that that's what alcohol regulation is about, is making that up. There's no way any legal mind or anybody with any intelligence that looks at the law cannot say that that's the mainstay of the law. To issue a valid license, and to do that you have to do a background check, and you have to do an investigation on the people that are applying for it.
I got you. Well, as I understand it, as you gradually took on the role of ATC commissioner, you started to detect what I'm going to just refer to as a corrupt thread within the agency.
Like I said, it was always there.
Okay.
I mean, it's in 1996 there was a thread there, and I'm not knocking the system too bad, but civil service lends to that a little bit, because it protects or limits your ability to really be a totalitarian manager or whatever along that line. You got to try to use some kind of sense and do the same thing. The main thing with you got to prove that they know what they're doing, and they pass a test to do that. You have to prove that they know what they're supposed to do, and you have to show that you've trained them to do that. But if you do those two things, and then they're still messing up, well, they can't blame intelligence on it. They can't blame that they're not trained, so they obviously doing it on purpose. And that was the problem with alcohol beverage licenses. You have somebody that would sit there and go through, and we would issue anywhere from thousands of licenses a month.
Wow.
And out of those 1,000, 100 to 350 of those licenses had problems, depending on what they were. Some of them simple problems, some of them serious problems. Well, those are the ones that I had to deal with all the time, and I chose to do that because those depended on an interpretation of policy that you couldn't have but one interpretation of. You couldn't have 50 officers out there, each one making a different determination, and based on either one of those things of not knowing or whatever, or taking something under the table in order to change whatever it was. So you got an agent that sits there and does everything the same way 150 times, and then all of a sudden the 151 time does something exactly opposite of what the law says, and exactly opposite of what he's been doing. and then use the excuse that, oh, well, you know, I just forgot, or I didn't know what I was doing, blah, blah, blah. And it just put a mark on the whole operation, and it had to be corrected. But the whole deal of it is, everybody said, once you issue a license, you can't take it away. And it's your fault it was issued. Well, we fought all that anyway. But those issues had been there all along. And
Okay.
I mean, you can go back, that's a whole nother 2-hour, 5-hour, 10-hour story of those trials and tribulations all along. And the people that were left or left ATC or moved somewhere else because of those issues as it went along. But you kept trying to think you got smarter, and you would bring people in that you thought were more intelligent, more credible, and that when you did your pre-screening and all that, you went over all the problems, and you let them know what the issues were going to be, and they'd sit there and look you in the eye and say, well, you'll never have a problem with me. I swear that I'm on your side. All I want to do is the right thing. And I'm going to make sure that we do that. That's the only loyalty that I wanted anybody to be, was loyal to the law and loyal to the process that we were putting in place. And 2009, well, it started after Katrina with some issues, but it started really culminating itself in 2009 and 2010 as far as the internal part of it. So at that particular time, which is when all this starts with my administrative assistant, who I'll let you say the name. You said it before, somebody can read it. I just makes the decision to resign after filing a complaint against me, which came directly from me investigating the issuing or the attempted issuing of a permit to a felon that didn't qualify for a license, and that investigation, which is a whole another hour or 2-hour deal, and me overcoming that and coming out of that clear and clean and everything else. With supposedly that complaint was, if you can believe it or not, what the end of it was, well, it wasn't nothing to do with sexual harassment. It wasn't nothing to do with anything along the line. Didn't like my management style. Now, I'd only been in that management position for 15 years, and the only people who didn't like my management styles was the one that I was trying to catch doing what they were supposed to do. So anyway, so that went by the wayside. I'm still in the process in 2010 of trying to identify all this and change it. And then in order to do that, I took some people that was in leadership positions right underneath me in the chain that wasn't doing anything to try to correct it, or might even have been putting roadblocks up in order to try to correct it, and move them out of the way. And continue that investigation into how a very, very valuable wholesale permit got issued to somebody in the Lake Charles area, and the system is there, supposed to track every step and everything, and it's just so clouded and confused as far as that goes. I had to, and also involved another local place in Baton Rouge, which was the first one that started the ordeal, and everybody can remember that. If they don't, you can go back and check it out. We'll talk about that later on if somebody wants to bring that up in the 25-hour segment we're going to do with this, if you see fit. But we're trying to make everything fair to everybody and have everybody abide by the same law all the time. So we get to again in 2009, another one of the things that came up was, out of the clear blue sky, I'm the head of the agency, I'm supposed to know what's going on, and maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe I wasn't supposed to know what was going on. But I got to hear on the radio that ATC has issued a permit to ULL Stadium to the school, the state-owned school stadium of the university, for the first time in the history, to sell alcohol for a Southern ULL game
Oh,
in
okay.
2009. Now, 2 or 3 problems with that. Like I said, direct change of policy, never been done before. How did it get through the system? How, I don't know about it. The license itself was set up to be an exclusive licenseship for beer for one of the wholesalers there,
Okay.
which is against state law and federal law, I might add. And so that came to light. Supposedly there was a law firm in Baton Rouge, a well-known law firm, that claimed that they got a legal opinion from ATC in order to put that thing in place. Well, I'm the only one can sign a legal opinion at ATC, and I didn't sign any legal opinion. Nobody talked to me about it. So I had to unravel that. That's another show if that's what we want to get to later on. So had to settle that problem, upset a bunch of people, big political people. The next thing comes along is I'm approached to try to facilitate a license for the Country Music Fest at LSU Stadium, which their onus now was that because the Saints were knocked out of the Superdome in 2005 with Katrina.
Uh-huh.
And we gave permission, which I had to hold my nose to do, to sell beer in Tiger Stadium for the Saints game, with the understanding that it was simply the law would allow it for pro games or whatever when necessary, but that, now that we already sold beer there, what's the big deal? No big deal. And look, I'm not a prude. I mean, I'm not against anybody drinking beer or whatever. I'm just for people following the law. That's all. Or if you're going to change the law, let's go to the legislature and change it to the legislature. Don't try to put it on me to do it by policy, which doesn't benefit the people that's been following the policy for 70 years a certain way. But anyway, so that became another issue, and that's another story down the line if we see fit to go into that area before this is over with or whatever. And I'm fighting that between February and August of 2013, where it found its way into the governor's office.
Was it 2013?
I'm sorry, August 13th, 2010.
Thank you. Okay, that was
2010. I got the 13 on my mind. By the way, it was Friday the 13th, ironically. But anyway, so I'm sitting there working that situation with lawyers that are sitting there telling me, we know this is illegal. However, we say you have the authority to make an exception to the law. Well, I didn't go to law school.
Right.
But I've been in court since I was 18 years old, and I never understood I had any law professor or law enforcement professor, anybody tell me that any public service servant can bypass a law with any kind of discretion unless it's specifically expressed. And then if you do, it certainly can't be anything that benefits one group over another group. I mean, it has
Sure.
to be for some other situation. But anyway, that would be a whole nother deal if we want to go there eventually in the process. But it basically, basically culminated itself. So that's the triple deal that's lingering and going on at this particular time. The in-house investigation into the issuing of permits, the Champion Square situation, and also the Country Music Fest deal that's hot and heavy and big time important. So on August the 13th, August the 13th, yeah,
Of 2010.
2010, I don't have anybody in my office except 4 or 5 people that are not on the other side. If you want to say the other side, meaning the people that I'm investigating that's in the middle of this deal. Now, let me get to this point.
Sure, take your time.
I've been a law enforcement officer, having a commission since I was 18 years old. I know what a law enforcement officer is. I have an associate degree in law enforcement from Southeastern. I have a Bachelor of Criminal Justice from LSU. And then I was, in 2000, I finished a master's degree in public administration from LSU. And I'm not saying any of that to be put in any other situation other than to know that I'm well aware of what a law enforcement officer is or it isn't. I've also taught law enforcement at 2 different basic training academies for police agencies or law enforcement agencies in the state. If you cut my wrist, I cut blue, law enforcement blue. I've been through every kind of situation that you can imagine in 34 years of law enforcement, from the point of view that I've worked the streets. I've investigated every homicide or every felony action in a parish for 15 years. I worked for the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office, where I was working out of the FBI office in New Orleans. I had an Deputy U.S. Marshal Commission to enforce the federal laws, with millions of dollars of insurance fraud cases and stuff at that high level of white collar crime. And then 15 years of dealing with the good side of alcohol distribution, manufacturing, and sales, but also the dirt side of it. And it's the dirt side that's the problem. And it's the dirt side where you try to have some kind of medium there, or middle ground, to separate the good from the bad. So for somebody in 2010 to come and say that I don't know anything about investigating, and don't know anything about the law says, and don't know how to run a driver's license check versus a background check or whatever else. I run the first driver's license check when I was 18 years old. I worked in the communications room at the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office, run thousands and thousands and thousands of checks for state police, for sheriff's deputies, for Gonzales police officers, and even FBI agents from time to time, or any other officer. Also run them to help the general population and public to solve some law enforcement issue that they have a right to access through a legal situation in order to try to resolve those issues. Mm-hmm. So here we get in 2010, the time of resolving their way, meaning the way that the New Orleans people wanted the Champion Square situation resolved versus the way the law read and the way that it should have been resolved, in my opinion, argumentative, but my opinion, was coming to a head, along with the other investigations that were coming up on that afternoon at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I get invited to the governor's office by Stephen Wagaspack, and that scenario in itself is another probably hour deal, but I mean, basically what took place there is I was just like on that show, that movie where they bring the coach in, or they bring the catcher in to the baseball team, and they said, "Man, you just been the best there's ever been." Blah blah blah, this, that, and the other. And then after they talk about how great you've been for 15 minutes, you finally say, "Well, look, tell me the bad, give me the shoot part," and the shoot part is, well, you are being investigated by an unnamed law enforcement agency.
Okay.
And because of that, Governor Jindal wants your resignation.
Mm.
And I told Stephen Wagaspack and Elizabeth Merrill, who's now the Solicitor General, and also Mike Edmondson. That's the three people that was in the room with me. I told them, I said, "Well, what law enforcement agency?" "We can't tell you."
Ah.
"We can't tell you which one." I said, "Well, look, this ain't my first rodeo, okay? This is what I'll do. Why don't we let those people investigate me? Put me on leave if you want. I don't care what you do.
All right.
Let them people investigate me. And when it comes back that I hadn't done anything wrong, if the governor wants me to resign, I'll still resign, because I'm an at-will employee. I got enough sense to know what the hell's going on with Champion Square and everybody else. And if I can't please what the administration basically wants," and I left out the part where 2 days before, where Stephen Wagaspack had called me and told me to issue the permit.
I recall that vividly.
Where I asked him for a paper trail, and said, "I'll be glad. I want to be a team player. I want to be a gentleman," all that kind of stuff. This was early on in the first administration, and everything that I had done for 15 years was exactly against what was being asked for me to do.
Right.
Was to make an exception for exclusivity and only one group of people to have access to something, and they were using the state in order to fulfill that. That is so mind-boggling that somebody couldn't see how ridiculous that was, or still is.
Correct.
But anyway, so they said, no, you don't understand. We having a press conference at 7 o'clock, and we either going to tell people you resigned, or we're going to tell people that you were fired. I said, "Well, Stephen, listen to me. You ain't giving me no choice in what to do. You can do whatever you got to do. I'm not resigning because I haven't done anything wrong."
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's where it is. So they put me out on the street, took everything I had, which is another segment, which I think will start the second deal if you want to. But they put me out on the street. 7 o'clock that night, they put out that I'd resigned after being told that I was under criminal investigation, and that started my saga as the former commissioner of alcohol and tobacco control after 15 years.
Wow.
Of giving everything in my life to run that agency above board, and with all the integrity and everything else that comes along that in the world.
Well, and I think we're reaching an excellent point to wrap up segment one. I just want to bring out one thing, and you can echo it, because as I said in the feature that I previously did, I intended the entire trial. And I can vividly recall the attorney for ATC being put on the witness stand, and it was his testimony. You can correct me if I don't have this correct, but he said there had never been another instance in which this kind, and he said the correspondence that he had, not you, I'm talking about the attorney, that he had with the governor's office was, quote, terse from beginning to end, and that he could not recall any other liquor license that office had ever issued that involved this level of high level, I don't know the right word, pressure may not be the word.
Let me end that with this. Like I said, Governor Foster was the biggest dream in the world. All he wanted you to do was the right thing, and have the backup to do it. And in my understanding, that means that you got a law. I was put in charge. Took an oath to enforce that law, and then the only way that the law changes is either through the legislature changing the law, or you go to court and the court says the law is not constitutional, and it gives you an outline or gives you another way, how the policy. You go back to the legislature and change it for some other reason. God bless Kathleen Blanco. She was as good a human being as anybody in the world, and she was a good governor.
Okay.
If Katrina don't come along, she's reelected the second time, and she probably would go down in history as one of the greatest governors, female or not, that the state had. But no issue whatsoever. The general administration, when you had a situation, you would go there and I'll use the names later if it's necessary, if we have some other deal later on the line, and they'd say, we want you to do this, and you'd say, well, I've never done it that way. There's no jurisprudence to give me that authority to do that, and I would be doing something that I've never done before. The law doesn't allow me to do that. And they would sit there and stick a finger in your face and said, let's get one thing straight. This is the general administration. We're going to tell you what the law says and it don't say. And I would say, well, I'm going to be a team player. Y'all accepted me. I know it's y'all will to do it, and I'm working for y'all. But if you're going to do that, you're going to do it right. I'm not changing anything. Without something in writing, giving me the reason why I'm going from A to Z without anything changing. So that is what the lawyer was kind of insisting or saying was the difference in the two administrations. I probably never got 2 calls from the governor's office the whole time.
Wow.
That Foster was in there for 8 years, or if it was, it always was. What's the deal here? And you would tell them, and the last thing they would say, follow the law, thank you, and hang up.
Wow.
And pretty much Blanco the same way. These people didn't want to follow the law. They wanted to do what they wanted to do to satisfy somebody in the deal, and it wasn't to satisfy the law or the jurisprudence. Now, that's my opinion.
And
Fight me if you want, indict me again if you want. I don't care. But that's what was taking place.
Well, while I want to genuinely, and I know our viewers share my sentiments, I want to genuinely thank you for allowing us to bring you in, and I know a number of times you said that that's another area we can get into. I'm not going anywhere, so I'd like for us to delve into as much as you feel like you'd like to air, and if that turns out to be 10, 12, 15 segments, I'm good with it. We'll space them out. But I find your story fascinating. I found it fascinating in attending the trial. And just to let our viewers know, I never met Murphy Painter in my life. We never knew one another. I met him for the first time at the trial under obviously highly stressful situation. I thought and think the world of his mother. I met her for the first time. And my mother was there for much of this trial. So I'm so appreciative that we're being able to find out so many things that even I didn't. I knew nothing about ULL. I knew nothing. This is the first time I've heard this today. So I really appreciate the opportunity you're giving for us to learn a lot of the things that went on behind the scenes, both before and after the critical date that you just mentioned, August 13th of 2010. And I'm looking forward to segment 2. How about you?
Well, I just want to say, I don't want to throw nobody under the bus or whatever else, but I've given everybody 11 years to try to correct the stuff that took place, and all they've done is try to keep me quiet. And I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm way beyond all that. But the truth needs to be told, and it needs to be recorded.
Very good, and that's why we called it Sound Off Louisiana, for anyone that would like to come and has an issue with governmental operations. And certainly you fit the bill. It's been an honor to have you for this first segment. Looking forward to segment 2.
Thank you, Robert.
You're quite welcome. Thank you to all of our viewers, and get ready for segment 2. I think you're going to find it and many others very interesting. Thank you once again.